is Rubbing Minds. It is our International Women's Day special. I definitely kicked Ebuka to the side today to take on this space as we would be forging on with conversations. Now, Nigeria enjoys an almost heavy presence of women in certain sectors. We've come a long way from fighting to be heard, fighting to be given a chance, to actually finding women in leading sectors, the banking industry, for instance, the tech space, academia, powerhouses, media, communications. And today, joining me is none other than this powerhouse, Miss Francesca Uriri, who is the founder of Leading Ladies Africa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I haven't seen you in ages. Happy International
know.
Women's Day.
Thank you, honey.
And month.
And month.
And month.
He just has to check that month in.
Because everybody is too much.
Is it?
How many Mother's Days are coming?
2.
There's still Day of the Girl Child.
Yes.
And you now took a whole month.
Yes. You know, Ebuka said this while they were in the studio, that at his church at some point, there was a Father's Day. And even we decided to do Thanksgiving
on Father's Day,
on Father's Day.
Well, I mean,
still made it about you.
Don't we?
We don't have enough opportunities to talk about these things, Ebuka. That's
I'm
why.
not complaining.
Exactly.
Thank you. So let's talk about, you know, Leading Ladies Africa. What was your biggest challenge in breaking into your industry as a woman?
I think that, I mean, to just level set, I think that the challenges have been somewhat similar.
Okay.
I'm Nigerian, I'm a woman, I've dealt with patriarchy, I deal with patriarchy, but I think sort of like the biggest thing would be just the mountain of gender norms. You're supposed to, you're not supposed to. Why are you doing that? Women don't do that. Where I'm from, da-da-da. So just systemic barriers and the huge mountain of gender norms, I think, has just been the biggest thing.
I want to ask the two-part question, sorry. What does Leading Ladies Africa do, on the one hand? And then secondly, I want to understand why, what you think is the bigger issue with all of what we've been talking about. Because misogyny and patriarchy is a global issue. But Nigeria has its peculiar issues with culture and religion, right? And those ones are deep-rooted. Especially that religion one. It's like, this is what God said, or Allah said, or whatever it is. Those ones have become almost cultural for us as well. Before you're not bringing in all the, okay, a Yoruba woman should do this one, a Yoruba man does this, all of that. How does that play into all of these conversations? Because even if you can break the global issues, those deep-rooted Nigerian ones seem very heavy.
Okay, so let's start with LLA, as we like to call ourselves, Leading Ladies Africa. We work to advance gender equity, not equality, equity, and I'll tell you what the difference is. Equity, socio-economic justice, and diversity for African women and girls. And what does that mean in a nutshell? We want to make sure that women have access to opportunities, so things like mentoring, equipping them for businesses, funding. We want to make sure that they have opportunities to advance themselves as they go along. And then the second bit that you asked, the Nigerian thing, is still very linked to norms. And I'll explain again what I mean by that. Norms are acceptable societal sort of like rules of how people should behave or not behave. Norms also affect men. So when people say, why are you crying? But men don't cry. Or when they say things like, Igbo men, XYZ, whatever that is. Those are normative behaviors that are carried on from generation to generation, and they then shape how people behave. So I'm Isoko, for example, and they say things like, oh, Isoko women, there's a big drink, oh. I, for example, can't hold my liquor. But there are all of their norms around that. They're shaped. And then because of those norms, anybody who is Isoko goes up and thinks, oh, I must know how to drink. And then it shapes behavior.
The way they think. So
that is why norms are so dangerous. And they also affect culture, because what did Chimamanda say? People are the ones who create and make culture. And so it then becomes this ripple effect of misogyny, misandry, you know, and all the other isms and andries that affect men and women.
But let's bring it back to the career and the work first. As I said while I was introducing you, we've come a long way from when it wasn't even heard of to have women, you know, be the MDs of banks, for instance, or women in tech, you know, and I know just off of what you talked about with the norms, there's a lot of bias already that goes into women in leadership role. But how important do you think it is for women to continue to assume those roles? And do you think, in your opinion, we're there yet? Because just before you came on, we talked about what has been currently going on in the news and, you know, in the Senate, for instance, and we found out in this particular situation that there are 105 senators and only 4 are women.
Yes.
So are we really assuming those leadership roles?
Yeah. We're not. I think, long story short, we're not. But we need to.
Okay.
Because there's a business case for it. Data shows that when you have more women in leadership roles, in companies and organizations, in politics, in policy, you have better laws, you have better policies, you do better business. This is data. This is not Francesca being biased. Of course, I'm biased for women being in leadership. But the data shows that is because why? Women bring a sort of diverse, inclusive, more empathetic perspective to leadership, to business, to policies, to politics. And then, again, it has a ripple effect on the organizations we see, on the sort of policies that are made into laws and regulations and all of that. So, yes, absolutely, women are required, not just from the optics perspective. And I like to balance it out by saying we don't only need them in positions of leadership.
Do you think it's more optics that has been going on of late?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, because that would explain why you sort of have, that would explain, so for example, you have a senator, a Nigerian senator, she's a powerful woman, but yet her voice is not heard on the Senate floor.
Yeah.
Or you have female CEOs who are disrespected and disregarded in the boardroom.
I mean, that's a whole lot of shebang to get into. So hold that thought. Rebecca is getting hot in here. We're going to go on a quick break and listen to an amazing International Women's Day message from another woman, a pioneer and a leader. Watch this.
Hello, I'm Funke Akindele, and today I speak to every woman, every girl out there that has ever been told she's not enough, that has ever been made to feel small, that has ever had to fight twice as hard to be seen, heard, or valued. Listen to me clearly. You are bold, you are powerful, you are strong, you are intelligent, you are beautiful, you are worthy, and never ever you doubt that at any time. In line with this year's International Women's Day celebration, we must accelerate action in empowering the next generation, because women are not just backbones of families. We are architects of communities, innovators of industry, and the driving force. The world is watching. It's time they see you for who you truly are. Unbreakable, unstoppable, undeniably powerful is our time. Let us accelerate action. Let us make history. Happy International Women's Day.
Absolutely amazing. We'll have many more of that as the show progresses. Now, joining us also, or joining Francesca to push the conversations forward is Ms. Lola Olukweu. Thank you very much. She's a co-founder and COO at Africa Technologies, a lady in tech.
Iberia Technologies.
Welcome to the show. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. I should. I have to say, turning 40, the eyesight's actually,
It's a real
welcome
thing.
to the show. We've been having this interesting conversation about careers and leadership role. And I do want to ask you a question because, you know, I've always been very curious about women in tech. And it has to do with pay. Because we know how, you know, there's always a difference in, you know, gender. When
there's
we talk
money
about
in tech.
Pay and gender roles and how men are perceived to earn more than, not perceived, they earn more than we do. So let's talk about it in the world of tech. How is that? Is it the same over there? And what do you feel about this, you know, equality in terms of payment as well?
Okay, I think I would first start by saying that for most of the multinational companies, there's like a general range.
Okay.
Where as long as you, by merit, are on that range, you earn that amount.
Even in Nigeria?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
However, sometimes you find scenarios where it's different. For instance, if you're an engineer, if you're a female engineer and a male engineer, they just believe that as a female, you would always have one reason to be absent. It's just a perception, really. Because if you really look at the hours you're working as hard, but just the general perception that, oh, oh, she may become emotional one of these days, or she, you know, she may just have a moment, or she would need some time. So let's just exclude her.
No, they talk about it. I've heard that conversation as well. That women do school run more than men, so they have to take longer lunch breaks.
So even without
maternity breaks as well.
Exactly. So even without you mentioning it, it's just you're just profiled to just be that. So in that scenario, you find situations where sometimes you're excluded from maybe certain rotas just because they believe you won't be available. So of course that naturally affects your pay because you're now not earning as much as your counterparts who are males.
So what do you both think we need to do, or what systemic changes need to happen for more women to, you know, take on more leadership roles, not for aesthetics and not for optics, for exactly every single thing we've spoken about, where they earn the same, even if not even more, because in my opinion, you know, having women in leadership roles, you can see the difference. And I'm not being biased, but you actually started the conversations by saying that. We've seen how when you have women in those roles and you have men, there's a clear difference. It could be because women are almost trained to think that they would fail, and we have to put in twice as hard work to, I mean, that's how I see it. It's like if the woman assumes this role, at the back of her mind, she already feels like they're counting on me to fail. If I burst out, she's a woman, emotional reaction. But what are the things that you think needs to happen for these changes to really take place in Nigeria?
I think it starts with self, to be honest. If you're very self-aware and you know who you are and what you can bring to the table, it will be hard for any external factor to influence that negatively. And then the next thing, I think, is the ability to ensure that you are as empowered, or probably more empowered. Because the truth is, sometimes if there is that segregation or that discrimination, you have to work extra hard to really, you know, prove yourself, or, you know, show that, you know, you are up to the task. So the first thing is, if you're very self-aware and you're very assured that you can really, it's a mountain you can climb, then you have to know this and know it just as you know your name. And then you need to strongly empower yourself and ensure that even while empowering yourself, the opportunities that show up, you don't pass them up. Show up. Regardless.
But you sound like you kind of she's looking like she doesn't completely agree, so let's talk about it.
So I kind of want to take it a click forward.
Yes.
Because you have a lot of women who are already doing this, right? They're doing the personal work. But if you do personal work and you meet systems that don't shift,
there's not much.
Then there's not much traction. So the systems, the systemic barriers, we must dismantle them. I'll give an example. When the governor of Kwara State, Governor Abdulrazak, when he came in, he made it mandatory to have an almost 50-50 gender-balanced cabinet. Nobody has ever done that in Nigeria. It's not magic, it's not rocket science. So you must create systems so that when the woman is prepped and ready and competent and qualified, she enters into a system that does not disrupt her trajectory. You have women who are of childbearing age in career. Make sure there's care. Make sure they have maternity leave. Make sure you don't penalize them for coming back to work and say, you know, is your brain, baby brain, is it really working? I've heard that said to a colleague.
Wow.
Says, are you really sharp up there? So you must dismantle those, and it's called systemic bias, where you build things into the system that actually impede progress. So governments must work with that, organizations must work with that to remove those systemic biases and then fully allow women to thrive. Rwanda, the country's cabinet, also has the president mandated that. Nigeria.
105. But I want to ask both of you real quick, because Ibuka probably has a question. How important do you think mentorship is for women? Because we talk about empowerment, and we talk about, you know, just because Ms. Lola also mentioned being prepared, and again, you know, which is a great point. How important is it for people to, you know, for there to be more mentorship programs, you know, and more, you know, just mentorship in the workspace? For what does that look like, and how important is that to breaking these barriers?
Again, okay, and I'll let Dr. O speak. Mentorship is great. Black women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. So it's fantastic, but we actually need people who say, we want to make her CEO. Make her CEO in 2 years. And what's the blueprint for that? That's not mentorship, that's sponsorship. That's like she's ready. Mentorship is getting you ready. You know, you have all of the information, Sponsorship is like the rubber hits the road. So we need to move again from mentorship to actual sponsorship, where we're channeling and really galvanizing women into these roles. Yeah,
to add to that, I'd also say that I think it's also important to have both side by side. Because imagine you have the door open for you, which has happened even in my case where I've had to sponsor people. You also have to kind of handhold them through how to enter that door. Because sometimes you find scenarios where you have it almost so easy. I mean, of course, that's few women, but you have it so easy because there are some sponsors that are opening the doors. But then you go there, you really don't know the protocol around the room, right? So mentorship and sponsorship, I think, should really continue to go hand in hand.
And just because you're speaking, and I know the role that you hold in your company, how important do you think for women who have arrived through that door, for women who hold positions as CEOs and, you know, MDs, how important is it for them to mentor and sponsor the younger women who might possibly look at them and think, how do I become you?
It cannot be overemphasized, the importance of this, because the truth is, if you don't replicate yourself, that role may become redundant to a woman, and then a male will replace. You must have like a plan. First to replace yourself, and then to replicate yourself on the table. Because if we are saying, oh, it's the parity isn't there and all of that, that means there are two things we're looking at now. There's replication and replacement. You won't be on that table forever. So it is so important that women should be patient with other women, especially the ones coming behind. We are in an era where everything is almost always microwaved. It's not like in those eras where, you know, things have to go pace by pace. Yeah. Everything is on a fast track now. And to be honest, for older women, they get a bit impatient with the younger ones. Like, it seems you're not serious, but that's not really the case.
Sorry, very quickly before we go, 30 seconds. I know you have an event coming up.
Yes.
Let people know about it and how they can be a part of it, very quickly.
So we have the Leadership by Inclusion Summit happening on the 15th of March at the Wheat Baker. What is it? It's essentially a convening for policymakers, government officials, the private sector, all within the gender equity space. We really want to create a blueprint and frameworks that actually work for women to advance in leadership roles across the country. So that's essentially what it is. And people can go to the Leading Ladies Africa page on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and get details on how to get on the wait list.
Are men allowed to sneak in?
Men are allowed to be very present.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now you're very. Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Lola Olukoyewu. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, my pleasure.
Thank you, guys. That was very impactful. Don't just stand there teasing me.